The Philippines is a maritime archipelagic nation. The Philippines' exclusive economic zone covers an estimated 2.2 million square kilometers of water. In the West Philippine Sea, an estimated $3.3 trillion of trade passes annually. We sit with thought leaders who will give us their perspective on energy. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno, and this is The Way Forward. Guido Delgado is the former Napocor Chief Executive Officer with experience for 34 years ranging from banking, power, and advisory services. He addressed the country's power shortage problem in the 1990s, and he has advised several significant power industry players, which led to successful ventures in the power sector in the Philippines. And he was recently advising the Philippine government through the Asian Development Bank in power and gas development. Very impressive credentials, Guido. Welcome to The Way Forward.
It's an honor. Thank you very much.
What is the impact of the blue economy on the power sector?
I look at ocean or the blue economy as a source of potential renewable energy sources.
Given the wide variety and the different types of technologies, what do you think among them is compatible with the Philippines?
I'd like to take a look at the model that the Philippines did for geothermal. Geothermal is a resource that the government developed. The government spent money, took the drilling risk, took the resource risk before it was given to the private sector. Unfortunately, the way that Republic Act 9153 is crafting the development of renewable energy, particularly for ocean technologies, is that the government says, I want to develop ocean technologies, but I won't pay for it. You consumers pay for it. So I think the government, if it really wants to look for sustainable long-term sources of renewable energy from the blue economy, it has to allocate resources, it has to allocate budget to develop these technologies, which can then be brought to the banks by the private sector.
Given the trajectory that the government has taken in terms of the Electric Power Industry Reform Act, or EPIRA, where they've privatized power generation, power distribution, do you think what way can they pursue in order to provide the capital necessary for ocean energy development?
I was hoping you would not get me there to discuss about EPIRA, because it'll take us a whole day to unravel, what has gone wrong. When we were planning the restructuring and privatization of national power in the 1990s, our hope was that the power of today would be reliable and the prices would be lower. Unfortunately, as you can see now in the environment, the prices are much higher. If we follow the trajectory that the government is taking today, I am not optimistic that we can develop ocean-based renewable energy technology. I think it requires the government to put in funds, resources, either directly by the Department of Energy or in collaboration with the Department of Science and Technology, and maybe the state university like the University of the Philippines, to really focus on ocean technology, because that's really where we are blessed with. We have 36,000 kilometers of coastline, one of the longest in the whole world. So I think the beauty about blue economy is that you do what's already there. You don't have to create water, it's there.
So currently, Malampaya is one of the major sources for energy in the Philippines, but it has been privatized. Where do you see the role of Malampaya is in terms of providing further power supply in the near future for the Philippines?
For transparency's sake, I have to tell you, I signed the Malampaya contract many years ago. And the reason why it was national power, which it shared with Meralco, was that unlike oil, the gas could not be converted to liquefied natural gas because the size was not big enough, so it did not have a global market. And given the size and the distance to the Philippine islands, to Batangas, for example, or Palawan, it made sense for the government to pipe the gas. One technology which the government can start exploring is what's called compressed natural gas. Compressed natural gas is really a system of barges where you can just compress the natural gas and bring it to the mainland. And if your distance is only about 2 days travel, that's the sweet spot between LNG and pipe. So I think the development of gas fields beyond Malampaya should be developed alongside compressed natural gas technologies.
We're always hearing that the Philippines is facing a power shortage in the near to long term future, or advice apply here in terms of finding other ways to harness natural gas.
I think before going there, Karen, what we must realize and accept, and this is a bit controversial as a statement, I think there's a market failure as a whole in the Philippine power market. When I say market failure, I mean there is no mechanism for players to know when to come in. It seems to me that as a sector, we want to say, prove to me that we need power before I actually allow you to build a power plant. And normally, by the time it gives the permission, it's too late. It takes 3 to 4 years to build a power plant. You still need 800 signatures. I've been telling them, look, even if we assume that you need the power here, if the lines are not there, you will never be able to deliver the power. The concession contract says you have to build where the plants are needed. But they are also regulated by ERC. And if ERC takes 5 years to approve their power development or transmission development plan, so by the time it gets approved, you're 5 years late. Unfortunately, electricity affects the small fishermen who have no access to that market, whose livelihood depends largely on how energy is made available to him. And I believe electricity is it's a basic human right because it affects your health, it affects your cognitive capability through education. But the point is they gotta do something that is really led by the government, because if you leave it to the market, if you leave it to the consumers, it will never get done.
Okay, Guido, I'm going to ask something related to national security. What is your opinion on China's effort to now create a 10-dash line compared to before when they came out with the 9-dash line?
I did write a paper during the time of President Duterte, which I addressed to the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, where I said, you have to look at the sources of energy for the Philippines as a national security issue. So coming to that issue of China's
10-dash line now.
10-dash line or what have you, what you should focus on is national security from an energy standpoint. And invariably, your answer will always be indigenous energy, whether it's geothermal, it's renewable, it's tidal energy, it's current energy, whatever it is, that's the solution in the medium. And I think even in the long term. And I think that's the beauty about the blue economy. Let's not invent new things. The ocean is there. The fortunate thing, and this is, I think, a message that I would give to our friends in the power sector, that the cost of renewable energy has gone down. The artificial intelligence technologies to manage local power systems is now there, and it's available, and it's cheap. And therefore, that makes the possibility of having small microgrid systems economically and technically viable. With that, we don't need to rely on long transmission lines. Microgrids using renewable energy should be a solution to many of the areas of the Philippines. And that's where the blue economy becomes very useful, given the fact that most of our communities are very near or are in the blue economy areas.
Brilliant, Guido. Thank you again so much for sharing your experience, but also your brain with us today.
Thank you, Karen, and it's always a pleasure talking to you.
I'm attorney Karen Jimeno, and this is The Way Forward. When we return, we discuss the potential of the renewable energy market with Energy Policy and Planning Bureau, OIC Division Chief Francis Richard Rabulan.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation, or MANA. Mana natin ito. We must defend it.
Nababuligan kita ang mga basura. Hindi ba naka-apekto din sa pag-ubos, pagpunhod sa buha ninyo sa isla?
Lagi na siya epekto mo kay nakadaot man na siya. Ang basura sa laod na daghang baga kayo manglutaw. Labi na gidugikan gibagyo, nga paglurang. Naagidakan basura mang lutaw, klase lang, plastik. Minus ginang kuha sa panagat sa laod. Nimikan man po kay, dili man pres ang klima ko. Pagbugnaw ang sa ilawom, wala gito na.
Nanawala ko sa gobyerno nga kami mga gagmay managat sana matugunan na ang among mga pangailangan o nga direkta lang sa amo mga gagmay nga mananagat. Mura po na ako ipangayo sa gobyerno.
This is the way forward. Francis Richard Rabulan, known as Rocky to his colleagues, is the current OIC Division Chief of the Planning Division under the Energy Policy and Planning Bureau of the Department of Energy. The division he is currently heading is responsible for the formulation of national and regional energy plans. Hi, Rocky. Welcome to The Way Forward.
Hello, Karen. Thank you for this opportunity.
So how has the blue economy affected the energy sector?
Well, as we know, blue economy is a sustainable model wherein we would want to sustainably utilize our ocean resources. Now, apart from this, there are more familiar renewable energy technologies. You have solar, wind, but another technology that will be seen as a game changer will be the offshore wind technologies. The President signed this executive order in April. So that executive order basically states we need a whole of government approach in developing offshore wind. And because there will be a number of agencies that will be involved, especially in the permitting process. So not only the department, but you also have the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. You also have the DOTR, the Philippine Ports Authority.
Are there any risks of disruption with the marine ecology when, let's say, offshore wind is installed or if this development takes place?
They do establish the so-called multi-partite monitoring team. That, in a way, is a safety precaution to monitor what their impacts or the disruption that they will have on these communities and even the coastal areas.
What is the Philippines' National Renewable Energy Program?
Karen, the National Renewable Energy Program primarily complements our Philippine Energy Plan. The NREP 2020-2040, which is the recent one, it actually provides an assessment of the RE sector as a whole. It also states some of the policy mechanisms that have been issued by the government. It also provides an outlook for the RE sector and even encompasses the identified challenges for renewables. You have solar, wind, geothermal, hydropower, biomass, so even ocean. It covers also ocean.
Would you say that the NREP has laid out any incentives for ocean energy, marine energy resources to be harnessed?
I think for the incentives part, the law is clearly the RE Act of 2008 basically sought what are the fiscal and non-fiscal incentives that you will be able to avail.
Based on the targets set by the Philippines, the share of renewable energy is aimed at 35% by 2030 and I think 50% by 2040. Do you think these targets are achievable? And second, how essential is it to utilize ocean energy or marine sources of energy to meet these targets?
That's also the target that was mentioned in our recent SONA by the President. So it's actually increasing renewable share in our power generation mix. So 35% by 2030 and 50% by 2040. And right now, renewables contribute around 22% in our power generation mix. So last year, there was an amendment to the RE IRR. Now they're allowing 100% foreign ownership participation for renewable energy projects.
Is the grid also part of the planning to be upgraded so that renewable energy can be a big part of the mix without having to worry about that intermittency problems?
That's a great insight. So actually to prepare for this influx of RE capacity, so we do have the Philippine Energy Plan, we do have the National RE program. What is being done is right now the department together with Transco and UP, so we will be doing the smart and green grid plan. So the SGGP will cater to where are these areas that you need to put up transmission to be able to serve this RE capacities coming in.
Rocky, there are several islands in the Philippines that are not connected to the grid, and that includes Pag-asa Islands and several areas of Palawan, for example, and other parts of the Philippines as well, because we're in a country of over 7,000 islands. Is that feasible?
So right now, off-grid areas are basically served by oil-based generation, but the department is venturing into hybridization. So you consider oil-based plus RE resource in generation. But for those areas that are really far-flung and even remote, the electrification part of that, usually we do employ the solar home systems.
Let's go to a non-renewable resource that relates to the ocean also, gas and oil. In October 2020, then President Duterte lifted the moratorium on oil and gas exploration, and this was expected to create more jobs in the next 5 years. Where are we now on this, particularly for oil and gas exploration in our oceans?
We do have a number of service contracts that are being monitored by the department, but there are also service contract operators that are under force majeure because the area that they are doing exploration development is part of these contested areas.
So you mean to tell me there are areas that have already been granted licenses to explore in the West Philippine Sea, but they have been put on hold because of the existing conflict between China and the Philippines?
Most of our service contracts are in offshore Palawan, mostly are in offshore Palawan.
Currently, Malampaya gas field supplies how much of the power requirements of the Philippines?
Malampaya, it caters to around 3,000 megawatts of capacity. That's natural gas in Batangas. So I think that's around 22% for Luzon. But total natural gas contribution in generation is around 18% for the whole of the Philippines.
Is it true that there is an issue of depletion of Malampaya gas field that we're facing?
The field is said to be in depletion by 2027, but the president recently signed the renewal agreement for service contract 38. The contract is supposed to end by next year, but with the renewal agreement, it's extended for another 15 years. So the period would enable the service contractor to further develop Malampaya and even its adjoining areas in Malampaya. So the objective is also to find if there's other reserves in there.
Does the government have a contingency plan in case the Malampaya gas field is depleted and even the adjoining areas that are currently being explored are not producing as much to meet the demands of the country?
One option that we're looking at right now is the liquefied natural gas. So there are actually already 2 facilities in Batangas. So there are 2 companies that hopefully by the end of the year can provide that additional capacity.
What renewable energy sources do you think are underutilized at the moment but have a lot of potential?
Personally, I think it could be geothermal because most of the contracts, if you would see, that have been awarded are solar, wind, hydro. Given we are archipelagic, so we could really benefit from developing this ocean and tidal energy.
Some of the local government officials, particularly those in off-grid areas, go through either no power connection or consistent power outages. So what would be your advice for these types of local government officials that are in that situation?
The technical working group in Mimaropa for power energy is actually working on having a summit by this year, target this year. So before that power summit, we will be doing this focus group discussions with the local electric cooperatives and the stakeholders in the energy industries about what are the specific issues in these provinces concerning power and electrification. And then hopefully the summit would be a venue that can come up with the commitment from our officials and even from those serving at the local government units.
Thank you, Rocky, for your practical advice and for sharing your years of experience with the Department of Energy.
Thank you, Karen.
Again, Mr. Rocky Rabulan from the Department of Energy. And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno, and this is The Way Forward. When we return, we discuss how we can harness renewable energy with We Energy Global President Mr. Quintin Pastrana.
Sabi ko doon, isang malaking paglabag sa kalayaan ng mga mangingisda sa atin kung ganito lagi ang mangyayari sa kalakaran sa pagitan ng China at ng Pilipinas.
Hindi lamang siguro sa amin ang pinaglalabanan nila, kundi maging sa susunod na mga henerasyon dahil ang ating pong buhay pangisdaan ay hindi po nagbabago, kundi unti-unti nawawala. Kailangan siguro na magtulong-tulong talaga.
Turing natin na talagang atin yung teritoryo na to at ipagtanggol ito, hindi lang yung mga nasa loob, yung mga mamayan at yung mga mangingisda lalo na yung lugar pangisdaan na panagkikitaan ng maliliit na mga isda doon sa West Philippine Sea.
This is the way forward. Quintin Pastrana is president of We Energy Power Pilipinas and Archipelago Renewables Corporation, and he's also head of business development for We Energy Global, which leads in clean, reliable, and affordable energy solutions. Hi, Quintin. Welcome to The Way Forward.
Thanks so much, Karen, for having me on your show.
Quintin, you had experience as well working on the Malampaya project. Can you give us an insight as to its viability for being a power source for the Philippines in the medium to long-term future?
Thanks, Karen. I mean, just building on that landmark investment that helped transform the Philippine economy, particularly the Luzon grid. Any natural gas field, no matter how mammoth size it is going to have issues with regard to renewability. It's not a renewable resource. Government planners will have to look beyond Malampaya for the medium to long term because a lot of these power plants that were built in Luzon that take this gas will have to either find another mammoth gas field or look for liquefied natural gas overseas.
Are there smaller sources around the Philippines that could be explored as an alternative to Malampaya?
Yeah, I think the Department of Energy does have maps and service contracts available. So I think it's just a question of the private sector coming in here and for government to make the ease of doing business much better for these smaller fields. So you're going to have to get a lot of international investment in those sectors. Plus, some of these areas might overlap into the West Philippine Sea, which is obviously an area of political risk. So that's going to have some diplomatic cover as well for any service contract holder to be able to drill, explore, and then develop these resources, which take quite a number of years. I think the Department of Energy has identified areas where the wave differential is high, where the ocean thermal is higher. So I think based on their studies, I think they were looking at hundreds, if not thousands of megawatts potential.
Would you say that ocean energy has the potential to follow the trajectory with the prices similar to solar power, where it started out very high in terms of cost and then it started going down, where it became really very attractive source of renewable energy?
The Moore's law effect, right? Whatever you do with the microchips can actually apply to certain sectors. Wind power, for example, I think costs have gone down around 60 to 70% over the last 10 years. I think certainly ocean, I think, will have the same trajectory, maybe not as steep a decline in prices as, let's say, solar or wind. But it's going to get there to the point that it will be very, very viable in years, especially when more government research and more private sector investment come in.
Would you think that geopolitical issues would affect any of these business initiatives?
That may be affected, especially when you're west of the Philippines, right? So you need diplomatic cover for that, for sure.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because one of the things that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on would be, what do you think of this new initiative from China with the 9-dash line and then the 10-dash line?
Well, they might not stop at that, right? So, but seriously speaking, I think it is an issue. I can only speak as a citizen and an investor that, as a seasoned lawyer, you'll know this, that recourse is very important. These contracts and these projects have 25 to 30-year runways. You're putting in hard-earned pension money, investors' money, my own money to these areas. So to the extent that there's freedom of navigation in that area, because $5 trillion of trade goes up to that strait and the West Philippine Sea upward to Japan or China or even Korea, that's going to be a critical thing for investors to look at.
Traditionally, what are you seeing in terms of what's commercially available?
Absolutely. Having worked in DC, you tend to think that a lot of these multilateral guarantees are there. So MIGA, for example, the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agreement or Insurance Guarantee Agreements, or the agencies, those MIGA types, the political risk insurance companies, if you do have these large capital investments, there's some recourse that you can enforce them. Now, there's one thing to claim it, there's another one to enforce it. So the jury's still out in terms of can you enforce these agreements to collect on that political risk insurance.
And at least right now, you can choose the seat of arbitration in credible jurisdictions like Singapore. Do you find that having the UNCLOS arbitration ruling in favor of the Philippines has also helped with the commercial side of, especially with Scandinavian countries and other foreign countries seeking to give grants or do investments in the Philippines?
I think so. I mean, anytime you have a rule of law precedent like that, that's quite clear and uncontroversial if you think about it from just the merits itself.
Quintin, since your company has already projects ongoing that develop the microgrids in other islands, have these translated to benefits for fishermen and those people whose work or livelihood rely on the oceans?
But if you actually have a microgrid using solar, you have, or you cut the price down significantly. The cold storage company can come in and extend the life of the fish. So you're seeing incomes actually triple at the least from what we've seen in our microgrids in Palawan. So there's a multiplier effect. And certainly it's the incomes of the fishermen and the fisherfolk who actually go up because now they can store their catch, now they can thresh more of their catch, and at the same time they can market it more sustainably.
Do you think that securing the special economic zone is something that would be crucial to continuing this development with the blue economy and then having private investors like your company, for example, really looking at long-term investment?
Oh, certainly. Any firm signal from the public sector helps investors lower the cost of doing business.
This question is a bit more geopolitical. So right now, we are seeing, for example, the Philippines also entering into joint military exercises with the U.S. in terms of securing the West Philippine Sea and other parts of the Philippines as a strategic area in relation to China. And just from a macro level, what do you think would be the implications of, policies that are set at that, government-to-government level or at the inter-country cooperation level when it comes to just the business sector also?
It's about freedom of navigation. To that extent, when they make it as broadly a themed as possible, the private sector is very happy with that. So it's not a military issue. It's the livelihood, it's the gas, it's the fuel, it's the it's the Amazon products. All these other things come in there, and they want to protect that because then that makes the world economy healthy.
What do you think makes sense from a policy perspective, given all of the potential, but where we are right now, and in terms of also the cost of doing business?
Yeah, I think it's a systemic effort for sure to move the needle towards the blue economy. But we certainly have the resources. That's already a great incentive to do it. And the fact that we're a net energy importer with our main geothermal assets and natural gas assets depleting, the issue there is we have to work fast.
Do you think that it is good policy that the Department of Energy put a moratorium on coal?
Anything from price caps or prohibition doesn't work, as we've seen from economic history, and we both studied that. The issue for us is, yes, you can cap something or you can deter something, but there has to be an incentive for something else. You got to channel the investment somewhere else. Conglomerates will make money where the market will reward them.
Thank you. And as a last, so perhaps you can share with us what's We Energy Philippines looking at in terms of future projects?
Absolutely. We're building our flagship in Sabang, where the UNESCO underground river is. We're powering the community with renewable energy. We have 16 more in Palawan that's coming up next year. So these 16 microgrids across from El Nido down to Bataraza and Rizal, those areas are actually going to be a model for others, not just our company or our partners, but other competitors, investors, to see that what you can do in Palawan, you can do in the 7,400 islands in the Philippines.
Thank you again so much, Quintin. It was such a pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen, for the time and the opportunity.
I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno, and this is The Way Forward.
The Philippines is a maritime archipelagic nation. The Philippines' exclusive economic zone covers an estimated 2.2 million square kilometers of water. In the West Philippine Sea, an estimated $3.3 trillion of trade passes annually. We sit with thought leaders who will give us their perspective on energy. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno, and this is The Way Forward.
Yung West Philippine Sea, atin yun dahil nasa loob ng ating par. Ayun, talaga dapat niya kausapin yung presidente ng China para mag-usap sila para kung ano man ang mapag-usapan nila, mapalis talaga yung Chinese vessel doon sa nagbabantay doon.
The Philippines is a maritime archipelagic nation. The Philippines' exclusive economic zone covers an estimated 2.2 million square kilometers of water. In the West Philippine Sea, an estimated $3.3 trillion of trade passes annually. Next week, we sit with thought leaders who will give us their perspective on the law of the sea. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno, and this is The Way Forward.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation or MANA. MANA natin ito. We must defend it.